Ladies and gentlemen, we're ready to get started. Thank you for many who have joined this inaugural task force town hall for the economic response group that Governor Herbert has put together. In just a moment, I'll share some details with you about the mission of the task force. I'm certain that it's not lost on all those participating why the task force is so important. But to give that information, we want to turn it to our governor, Gary Herbert, who organized the task force on Monday and who convened its first meeting on Tuesday. We had our second meeting this morning, Thursday morning. Governor, thank you for joining us. We're going to turn the time to you for your welcome and remarks.
Well, honored to be with you for the beginning of this setting. We appreciate this community out there. This is kind of a tough time. Coronavirus caused everybody and there was uncertainty in the public square. What can we do? The people are sick. That spreads. Priority for us all. In Utah, there are a lot of things. We have limited events, schools. We don't see. We see learning, not only education. Access to our restaurant, go and eat. Those things are significant damage attitudes.
Governor, I'm sorry, but they're getting on spotty. I need you to, or just to, if that's, and
that sound better?
Go ahead and try.
Where do you want up there from me? So can you hear?
Governor, we're on your word. Let's see if we do our reestablish better connection.
Pretty well. I'm perfectly well. Your end of things.
Thank you, Clark. Governor, Clark has said just fine. So keep going. Interrupting you.
Clark and I, again, we all know the challenge we face with coronavirus, COVID-19, and the concern the government has, and we all have, of how do we protect the population from the spread of this virus. A concern and a responsibility the government has is to keep the health and welfare of their constituents to be good. And it's a challenge. This is a unique situation. We've never been in this kind of situation ever before. And as I was saying, it's putting a dampening effect on our attitudes, what we do, what we think we can't do. We hear negativity, no sports, restaurants, public schools are closing. It's just kind of a cloud over everything. And on top of that, yesterday we have an earthquake. That wasn't enough before. So I can understand why people are a little bit discouraged. I can understand why the stock market is, free falling. But what we need to start talking about with the help of the business community is that although we do have areas of concern out there with restaurants having to find different ways to, in fact, distribute food, we can't gather in large groups anymore, at least for a period of time, maybe for the next couple of months. But there are a lot of good things we can do. So we want to have a press conference and have a discussion with the people of Utah about the things that you can do. For example, I know Clark golf game a little bit more often now because golf courses are a great place to go and recreate, where you can go out there. There's not many people on the golf course, just usually no more than about 4 of you, and a wide open space. Well, we have park areas people can go. You can get together in small groups and still have socialized events. You can, in fact, use the new term of social distancing to make sure that you're not too close. You can take extra care of sanitizing your hands, our hands with we're seeing times, what we do to keep ourselves, eat better, good nutrition, keep our immune systems up. There's things we can be doing proactively. And if we're doing things proactively, we're going to feel better about where we're at and what we're going to accomplish and what the outcome is going to be sometime down the road. Our economy generally is doing very well. And so although we have problems with the stock market, I know Clark's going to talk to you about how great the construction industry is right now. With interest rates being at an all-time low, it's a great time to buy a home, great time to buy anything. The banks are going to be willing to cooperate. We'll have some reports on that. Our economy in virtually every sector other than the hospitality sector is continuing to do well. It's maybe not growing like it was before, and certainly overall we have to worry about unemployment and the ripple effect downward. We need to see what we can do to in fact correct that so that we in fact stay and minimize the drop in our employment. Again, our workforce services are up and aware. They have programs available. The federal government is stepping up to provide some additional funding, some SBA grant money and business loans to help people stay afloat. So there's help is on the way. The cavalry's coming. So again, I hope that what we have an opportunity to talk about is that there are good things happening out there and things that we can do, and our lifestyles don't have to be totally modified into complete shutdown mode. That's, I guess, what I'm saying. There's just, for example, it is surprising to me that we have this run at our grocery stores. Our grocery stores are going to stay open. The supply chain is there. You don't need to hoard water. We have good water supply in the state of Utah, unless you're in a remote area or somehow your plumbing breaks. You should have adequate, ample, good potable water. Again, cows continue to produce milk. Chickens are laying eggs. People are manufacturing toilet paper. Those supply lines are kept open. So there's a lot of things we can do. And by the way, we're in the process of learning and evolution as we study this new virus we've never seen before. But we're going to be reviewing this periodically. We're going to find best practices. We're going to see if we can modify and improve and make things better. So I'm really optimistic about the future. We've got to get through this little tough part right now to stop the spread of the virus. But I think we're going to do that over the next few weeks. And so there's daylight kind of coming in at the end of the tunnel. And there's a lot of things we can do and positive things to give us hope and give us optimism. Phrase that we've kind of adapted here, and I know you know this, Derek, and that is that we want everybody to look at what the situation is, see what you can do to adapt to it. It may need some innovation, some new creative approaches. So adapt, innovate, and then we can overcome. So adapt, innovate, and overcome is really what we're trying to do. And we want the public to understand that that's happening. There's reason to have hope and optimism and confidence about the future. It's not all blurry-eyed and dreary. We have actually, the sun's going to come up and there's going to be blue skies and the robins and birds are going to be out chirping. So I'm excited about the future.
Governor, thank you for your message. Thank you for your optimism. Most importantly, thank you for your leadership. You're not a novice to this. You came into office in 2009 at the depths of the Great Recession. We had nearing double-digit unemployment, and you said your number one focus was going to be on the economy. And you set a goal at that time to create 100,000 jobs in 1,000 days. You accomplished the goal by supporting the private sector. We have about 950 participants on this call, most of whom are going to be from the private sector. And I'm sure they love your message of optimism, but they also know what you know, which is the reality of the situation. Just as we had a very real situation in the Great Recession that needed to be overcome, I'm sure you would say today that you continue to be laser focused on the economy. So thank you for your leadership, Governor.
Let me just, if I could add just a postscript on that, Derek. I believe in goals. I believe we need to set a goal, and that's to come out of this difficult time as healthy as we could when we went into it. We are doing so well as a state. My first inaugural address, we talked about not only setting goals to come out of the recession, but we set a goal to have more public-private partnerships, meaning we have to work together. Government can't do it all. We have a role to play. We have a significant role to play, but the private sector is where the power is of innovation, where we're going to find better ways to produce economic growth. It's not government. We don't create any wealth. We redistribute the wealth. So we want to make sure that in this process here today, that we're developing a public-private partnership where we can work together. We need to hear from the private sector. What are your inhibitors? What's stopping you from being successful? We know there's fear and anxiety. We know that we don't have the social gathering capabilities, at least in the short time that we've had before. But we're going to have some short-term discomfort for the benefit of long-term gain. That's going to be us working together in this public-private partnership. So I said if we would do that, we had unlimited possibilities of what we could achieve. And that's proven to be true. Now it's just another inning of the same game. We have a little bit of a challenge right now, but working together, we will find solutions. We will adapt, we will improve, and we'll go forward with a growing economy. And people should be optimistic about that ability we have in working together with government and the private sector. So we're looking to hear what suggestions you've got, what are your concerns, and let's work together and find the solution.
Thank you, Governor. We'd now like to give some time to our Lieutenant Governor. All of you know that Spencer Cox was appointed by Governor Herbert to lead the COVID-19 task force for the state of Utah. The focus of that task force, of course, has been to prevent, mitigate, and protect the health of all Utahns. In the introduction for our Lieutenant Governor Cox, I would say that all of us on the call today are here because we're concerned about the economy. And the number one thing that we can do to protect the economy actually has nothing to do with economics at all. It has everything to do with protecting the health of individuals and families in our state, which is where our Lieutenant Governor has had his focus the last several days. Thank you, Lieutenant Governor, for joining us.
Thank you, Derek, and thanks to the governor and everyone else on this call. I appreciate your willingness to take on this responsibility as one of the subgroups out of the COVID task force is really, as you have said so wisely, we're trying to flatten the curve when it comes to illness. Come to what's happening in our economy. And we know that can be brief because I want you to get back to the economic pieces of this. And the team that you've assembled are the best in the state. We're so lucky to have all of you and your leadership. Let me just share a couple things that I think are important that everyone know. We have an incredible team on the task force that are making recommendations to the governors and others in every phase of this operation, from obviously healthcare to public education to childcare and economic pieces that you're talking about right now. For me, the number one priority right now is testing. If we are going to get ahead of this and get ahead of it faster than other places, other countries, and get back to a sense of normalcy, it's going to be because we are testing much more than we are right now. Now, this is very well documented, the problems that our nation has had when it comes to testing capabilities. The original tests that we were given were bad tests, and now that the private sector is really jumping in to try to catch up. But there are pieces of the supply chain that are missing along the way. We're getting those filled in. Our hope is that by next week we'll be testing in the thousands every day instead of just right now we're testing about 300 a day between the three labs here in the. Once that we can start to pinpoint spreading and really get to the heart of people safe. And we just had state, IHC, ARUP at the University of Utah, all of their lab technicians. We were just on a call, and that's why I was late. And I'm going to have to jump back off of this to get on there because that's where we need people to focus right now. Is on that piece, the testing. So again, we're thankful for the sacrifices everyone is making. We want to make this as short and painless as possible, but we're grateful for the leadership of the people on this call. Thank you.
Thank you, Lieutenant Governor. And you addressed the number one top question that's been coming in was specific to testing. We all understand, if you have time for just one follow-up question to testing. We all understand the connection between testing and health, about the importance of testing as it relates to our economic response efforts, and specifically how testing and having testing helps us to see the light at the end of the tunnel as businesses are planning. I know you can't put a date out there, and I'm not asking you to, but as businesses are planning for the next couple weeks ahead, why is testing so critical to that? Help us understand that if you could.
Sure. Yeah, and this is what we've seen in other countries. The countries who have been able to test more, and even places within that country, we've seen it in Italy and in some towns. What that allows you to do is to really isolate those people who are infected, and get them healthy, and make sure that they don't infect other people. As someone who ran a private business for 10 years, at the situation you decisions. We're unfortunately being forced to make decisions right now because we don't have good data. Now, what we're seeing out of Washington State and out of is incredible, starting to of their healthcare system. And that's when you start to see mortality rates spike, like we've seen in Italy now with mortality rates above 8%. Getting mortality rates down closer to 1% can happen if you don't overwhelm your healthcare system. And so again, the only way to do that is to test more, see where it's going, and then be able to make decisions based on what you're seeing from the number of testing, the number of people that are becoming infected, and then the rapidity of the spread of that. What we're trying to do right now is slow the velocity of that spread. And because we don't have good data, that's why we've had to implement these social distancing measures. In fact, the governor and I are social distancing right now, which is why I'm not in a tie and he is. I'm in an undisclosed location somewhere. But if we had been able to do thousands, dozens, or might not have had to implement this in every county or in every location right now. But the reverse of that is true. If we have really good testing, we'll be able to come out of this quicker and know where it's not spreading and know where we've been able to contain it.
Thank you for that, making that connection so clear. I know I said one question. I do have one more follow-up question, but I promise you this will be the last. We are getting a few questions in, people wondering about who's on the COVID-19 task force. You don't have to name the name by name, but it may be helpful for people who just to get an idea of the types of organizations, the types of people who are represented on that task force.
Of course. Thank you, Derek. So we have healthcare professionals, obviously from our state lab, from IHC, representing the University of Utah and other healthcare providers across the state. We have representatives from education. We have representatives from the religious groups, nonprofits. We have experts, scientists from different organizations in the state. So it's a robust group. The Hospital Association is also represented there, and of course you're a member of that, representing the chamber and representing the economy side of this. Have representation led as Senate and Speaker of the House are both represented on there. So we have a good cross section of leaders here in the state that are involved in making these decisions and then helping to amplify. And I would note that this is a body that doesn't have actual statutory authority. We make recommendations to the governor and to others, to our local health departments that are also represented, and then they make decisions based on those recommendations.
Thanks again, Lieutenant Governor. We know you've got to run. You've got an incredibly busy schedule, keeping us safe, and thank you for doing that, and we'll let you go.
Thanks, Derek.
So now I'd like to tell our participants a little bit more in detail about the Economic Response Task Force that Governor Herbert established on Monday. As I mentioned at the outset, we had our first meeting on Tuesday and our second meeting just this morning. And I'm grateful for the tremendous response that we've seen from both the private sector as well as the public sector in coming together. As I chair that group, I can tell you we've got the brightest and the best minds around the table who are thinking about this and talking about it and working hard at it day and night. We've adopted as an informal slogan to flatten the dip. That's our job as a task force. We've all heard a lot about flattening the curve as it relates to the progression and hopefully prevention of the coronavirus COVID-19. But as our job on the Economic Response Task Force is to flatten the economic dip. And it's important that we keep an economic response top of mind all the time. I often say that if we do this right, the virus will affect just a few of us, but if we do it wrong, the economic impact will affect all of us. The mission of the Economic Response Task Force falls into three categories. The first is to be able to consolidate and curate information that businesses can access immediately as to the resources and tools for them to get through this very difficult time. I hope by now all of our participants are familiar with the state website, coronavirus.utah.gov. We, in just the past couple of days, have added a business section to that website. And on that business section, we will be putting the latest and greatest resources that exist, including the recently passed federal stimulus programs that we'll be hearing more about from Senator Mike Lee and Representative Ben McAdam virtual town hall. We're also putting state and local resources on there, as well as business resources. We're going to hear in just a moment from two business leaders in the state of Utah about what they're doing to keep their businesses open, to keep their people employed. And all of these best practices will be compiled at the business section of coronavirus.utah.gov. The second broad category that is the focus of the task force is to assess and make policy recommendations to our federal delegation, our state leaders, including legislative leaders and those in the governor's office, as well as local governments. And then the third, and maybe the most important part of the mission of the task force, is to communicate. And the reason that I say it's the most important is because we can have the best information in the world, but if it doesn't get to the people who need it, we will not have accomplished the mission. And in order to do that, we've organized into several working groups. They include a policy working group, federal stimulus resources, state and local resources, job placement, critical infrastructure, industry outreach, and as I mentioned earlier, communications. Our watchword is for businesses to adapt, to innovate, and to overcome, so that they can stay not just open for business, but so that they can stay safe for business. And on that note, I'd like to turn some time over to Steve Starks, the CEO of Larry H. Miller Group of Companies, who's going to tell us about some of the things that he's doing in his business to adapt, to innovate, and to overcome. Steve?
Okay, thanks, Derek. And thank you for the leadership on this, Governor Herbert and Spencer Cox, Lieutenant Governor, thank you. And we'll get through this together, I guess is what I want to say to start with. But at the Larry H. Miller Group, we've obviously been affected. It felt like last Wednesday night we were at the epicenter of this whole conversation nationally and in some ways internationally, as two of our jazz players were tested positive. And so we've dealt from an employer standpoint how to quarantine a workforce. We've had to sanitize our facilities, including the Vivint Smart Home Arena, Zions Bank basketball campus. The state was tremendous through that process, and we're grateful for their leadership and help. What we're looking to do now is we're messaging to our employees frequently, and whatever their role is, we're asking that they do it really well. And that's going to be good for them. That's going to be good for their families. That's going to be good for our economy. That's going to be good for our business and the community as a whole. And so there are certain things that we can control, and there's things that we can't control. But the things that we can control, let's make sure that we're focused, that we're doing those things every day fundamentally, and that'll help. The second thing that I would mention is that we're having to become more innovative in our approach to business. And so as an example, in our automotive dealerships, we realize that people have critical transportation needs. And so we will actually go pick up your car for you. We'll bring it into the service department to get serviced. We'll rotate your tires, we'll change your oil, we'll deliver that car back to you in a way that's safe, that is responsible, that honors what our medical professionals are telling us, but allows you to keep functioning. We're announcing today that we're willing to go help those on the front line, our first responders in the healthcare community. We'll go pick up your car. We'll make sure that you have a concierge service so that you're taken care of. And so this has forced us to think differently. If we're selling cars, then we can do that over the phone. We can do that through the internet. We can make sure that you can get all the information you need as a consumer so that you feel comfortable being able to make a purchase like that, and we'll help you through that process. The third thing I would mention is that we need our consumers in the state and in our community to also be innovative. Businesses are going to be innovative, but consumers have to think creatively about how they continue to function. And so if you have ideas or suggestions, please share those. But we would encourage you not to shut down this economy either, because it's going to become self-fulfilling if we all do that. Let's continue to build upon what the things that Governor Herbert said, and that is, let's keep going. Let's keep looking for ways to innovate on the consumer side, certainly on the corporate side as a community, and that'll help us get jobs that can continue to be done and fulfilled that we should really be focused. The last thing is just to thank everybody who's working together. I feel like the way that Utah approaches these challenges is going to give us a competitive advantage, just like our businesses have competitive advantages through innovation. And so we can't thank everybody enough, and we will get through this, and appreciate again the leadership.
Thank you, Steve. And now let's give some time to another CEO from the state's largest home builder, Clark Ivory from Ivory Homes.
Thanks so much, Derek. This is a great opportunity. And before I go on and talk, I want to just say that Steve Starks, the Utah Jazz, and the Miller family, there's no one that is giving more. And I really take issue with anyone that takes a shot at that. No one has been more stand up and more behind our business community and our community at large than the Millers and then Steve Starks. So my tribute to them. I want to say that I'm grateful for Derek Miller and the chamber, and also for the governor and his leadership here. I think we've had a real problem nationally and even locally until just recently with not having enough. But as we see the governor moving forward, is constantly communicating with us, and the lieutenant governor constantly communicating, and having Senator Lee here and our representative McAdams, what a great guy he is to be on, even as he's recovering. We are so fortunate to have individuals in leadership that are communicating in a tremendous way with us. And as I think about how I need to manage my business during this time, communication is number one. So I'm going to just tell you sort of what I've told my managers, and those of you who are business executives and leaders and managers managing your own companies, I'm sure you'll have great ideas that you can share with me. I'm just going to give you a few of my basics on what we're doing as we navigate through these difficult times. And we do know something about difficult times, because in the last financial crisis, housing was akin to being an airline in what is today's current crisis. We've managed through that very effectively, and we learned a lot of lessons. And today we're more confident about our ability to handle a challenge because we've been through tough times. I want to let you know that just like we got through the last crisis, all of us are going to get through this crisis. But number one, we need to communicate, and we need to communicate with our managers and with our team members constantly. I've asked my managers to be reaching out to their teams on a daily basis so that there's a bit of a calling tree. When we had the earthquake yesterday, I wanted everyone contacted within just a matter of hours to make sure of their well-being. When they know that you're thinking about them, contacting them, following through with them, they stay engaged, they stay productive, and that is key. We did communicate through this very task force, the Economic Response Task Force, that we were concerned that cities and municipalities were closing down and would not be able to give us our permits or do our inspections, even though we know that that's something that they could do with the right protocols and social distancing. Our governor got immediately involved, and so did our Speaker of the House. They all talked to the League of Cities and Towns, and the response there has been terrific. In fact, today, We were alerted that some of the businesses, some of the cities are open up again and helping us process through our permits and through our inspections and everything else. So that's key. And the communications we've received because of this group have been important. It's important that we understand the situation and that we don't communicate sort of a best case scenario or a worst case scenario to our team, to our employees, and to my managers. I try to tell them, have a sort of a middle of the ground approach, a middle of the road approach in terms of what we're communicating. Let's not say this is going to be, let's not be doing at the same time. I think we've got to, in that effect, a positive and yet a realistic. We're about to start a new campaign internally with all of our managers reaching out to our team. We're going to call it the Spring of Hope. We're delivering sort of a neat package to every employee, sort of makes them think that spring is coming very soon. Of course, today is the first day of spring. And so we're going to follow through and make sure that we do sort of fun and creative things. During the last downturn, we had the Summer of Love. We did lots of advertising. We did lots of events. We can't quite have the same approach because we can't have big events, but we're thinking about other creative ways to make constant contact and communication with our team, our sales consultants, our customers, and everyone that sort of makes up what's important for our business. Finally, or secondly, I want to say that health and safety is still very important. And so what we've done is we've figured out those employees that can telecommute and they're staying at home. But then we also have shifts of people that need to be here on site that are meeting with customers. We're very careful. We're keeping our office doors actually closed. We're meeting with people by appointment only, but then we can make sure that we don't have several people at the same time. What are we doing by appointment only? We're meeting with people in our model homes, in available homes that are for sale. We're meeting with them in our design center where they're picking out all their selections. We have 550 buyers currently in process that we either have their homes under construction or that are working towards getting ready for construction. We need to protect that customer base and make sure we take care of them. They need one-on-one help, but we can't have it, we have to do it with the proper social distancing. So we're able to do that by making sure we don't have too many people in our design centers at once. We're spacing them out. We're giving them individual attention, and we're very careful with hygiene, wiping down all of our products that they could be handling in between appointments, and making sure that our own people are very clear when they invite people for these appointments that everyone is healthy, that they're coming in and they're ready to meet with us and they're not feeling any ill effects of bad health. You know, the next thing that we're doing with our guys on site is we're making sure that they are wearing, and this is normal for them, they wear protective gloves, and those that are working inside, they wear masks. So they can continue to operate. I was on one construction job site today, and there were 8 different trucks doing several different trades. They're all being very careful. Some guys are on the roofs, some guys are working on installing landscaping. There's a whole bunch of things going on. And these guys are so happy to be at work. I mean, this is keeping them engaged. Many of these laborers, they would not be able to keep the same social distancing if they were having to spend the whole day, especially on a rainy day, not working or in a home. And they wouldn't be in nearly the same healthy situation that they are when they're carefully monitored at work. So I think that's terrific, important. Protocols. So health and we have to deliver on. We've got to keep our business. How do we do that? Who the employee is. I've asked them. I had a meeting this morning and are done. Chat just like this. But my guys they wear a tie in the office. My financial guys, they're wearing a tie. I like that. Why? Because they're maintaining routine. Important. That routine entails getting up, guys, talked about doing all these things. We can manage our way, have both a healthy mind and that we can anchor our. We got to focus on what every day. I love Chambers leading out with this of what can and emphasizing that. Finally, we've got to have and sort of a list of what each day, and right now our making on a month plan, and I'm that the governor and two where specific date our healthcare professionals how long this is going to be. They're doing a lot of right now to be able to shortly and say urgent phase. You have to continue stay in this same realm of social, and then in the stage you'll be able to do, and then finally we'll be in the stage, and that's what we're looking at, getting guidance and really make that we can get all of our to sort of buy in, tell our customers this is the light at the end. I'm just very grateful for being here, Derek. Thank you so much. Turn the time back to you.
Thank you, Clark, and thank you for those very real world examples of what you're doing in your business to stay safe. We have a lot of small businesses that have joined on the call today, and I'm sure they're wondering how all of this applies to them as well. So I would say hold tight. We've got some industry association representatives that are going to talk about small businesses and what they can do, and particularly if you're facing some have already faced layoffs or face imminent layoffs, what you can do for your people. Before we get to that, we want to go to our senior senator, Senator Mike Lee, who's joined us, as well as our representative from right here in Salt Lake City area, Ben McAdams. Senator Lee, we're going to go to you first, and I'm sure our 1,000 participants are eager to hear about what's coming out of Washington, D.C. to make sure the economy keeps moving forward.
Hey, thanks so much, Derek. And thanks for convening this group and for inviting me to participate. This is a great organization. Right up front, I want to point out Allison Bell, my chief of staff, is my representative on the task force. If anyone needs to reach out to her, feel free to do so directly. Her cell phone number is 801-503-5398. And we want to make ourselves accessible and available in any and every way we can. We've got a few objectives as we go through this difficult period in our state and in our country. One of them is that we want to make sure that we continue our business outreach and our outreach to constituents to make sure that we make available to them what we need to. I've been in constant contact with CEOs throughout the state, asking for their input. I've had conversations with Associated Food Stores, with SkyWest Airlines, conversations with Lifetime Products, trying to figure out what each of them are doing that makes this better and what we can do to avoid doing any harm and avoid inflicting harm from Washington. We've also been focused on our constituent services and making sure that people are able to navigate at the same time existing law and law as it's being enacted. And I'll go through some of that here in a moment. In addition to this, we've had some of our international constituent service cases. We've got Utahns at any given moment all over the world for various reasons, some for business reasons, some for travel related reasons, in some cases for humanitarian or religious work. And at any given moment, there are situations that develop when people travel in foreign countries and need to return home to the United States. Those have grown especially acute over the last 72 hours as we've got people, especially in parts of the world like the Philippines, in Latin America, especially South America right now is a real hotspot, where we've had a number of countries that have quarantined in such a way as to ban all incoming and outgoing international flight traffic. As a result of that, you've got American citizens, including many Utahns, who have in effect been stuck in certain Latin American countries. Peru is a real example of this right now. We've got a number of Utahns who we're trying to help get out of that country as a result of the fact that they're under a basically full quarantine order. We've been working with the State Department in order to get them out. We were able to get someone else out of another country yesterday with some assistance from the Department of Defense in an unusual circumstance. In the meantime, we've got 3 phases of legislation coming out of Washington. Phase 1 occurred about 10 days or 2 weeks ago. Phase 1 provided $8.5 billion in assistance to state and local governments and to the healthcare industry to make sure that we're prepared in the first wave of what's happening. We got that one passed early on. Phase 2 was just enacted last night. Phase 2 was designed to make sure that our workforce, in particular, options to workers so that they are not left without those options. There's been some bad reporting on this that I would love to be able to explain. I caught an error in the legislation when it was enacted on Friday night. It's 110 pages long, passed by the House of Representatives shortly after midnight Eastern time on Friday. Even over the weekend, the House of Representatives itself acknowledged that the legislation wasn't quite ready for prime time because they adopted 90 pages out of 110 pages that they had enacted in so-called technical changes. In other words, they basically rewrote the entire law over the weekend. That became formally passed by the House of Representatives Monday night. Between Monday night and Tuesday night, we were able to discern a critical error that they had put in place. This legislation was drafted with the best of intentions, but when we're moving as quickly as we are right now to try to address the crisis, it's easy to overlook some of these errors. And that error was, everyone agrees that those who are displaced temporarily or otherwise, for example, furloughed as a result of a coronavirus-related issue or illness, need to be made whole during this process, especially when we consider the fact that this is a crisis that is 1 part biological and 4 parts government response to that biological cause. In other words, in order to the country from the further spread of this horrible virus, we're putting in place certain measures that are themselves going to be disruptive. They're necessary, but also very disruptive. So we want to make sure that those workers who are furloughed are made whole. The House bill dealt with this by putting a new affirmative obligation on the part of the employer, which we discovered after this was put in place Monday night. Between Monday night and Tuesday night, we realized that would run the risk of putting a lot of employers into bankruptcy and out of business. And consequently, a whole lot of workers stand potentially to lose their jobs as a result of that legislation. So Tuesday night, I and a handful of other senators got together, identified the problem, but started from the premise that we have to address the same problem, just in a way that doesn't threaten people with losing their jobs. So I got together with them late Tuesday night. We worked through the night and drafted legislation. One of my colleagues personally scratched out a draft of this and then asked me to review it. We brought some staff in, then we got it drafted into formal legislative text. By the next day, which was yesterday, a majority of the United States Senate voted to adopt that amendment, putting the obligation on the unemployment insurance system, which the federal government would then backfill under our legislation in order to keep them whole, to protect workers, and do so in a way that wouldn't jeopardize their employment to begin with. For a variety of procedural reasons, even though a majority of the Senate voted to adopt that amendment, it wasn't included in the final passage adopted by the Senate last night. This was disappointing, and it was a reason why I couldn't vote for the final bill. The final bill, as enacted, while drafted with the best of intentions, will harm workers unless we're able to get this finished. For that reason, I'm going to push for its inclusion in the next round, what we'll call the Phase 3 legislation. The Phase 3 legislation is going to contain widespread financial assistance to promote liquidity and to provide for individual and business level financial aid from the federal government. Under the Republican proposal that was filed by Senator McConnell earlier today and submitted to Senator Schumer for his review, every American would receive $1,200 in direct payment assistance. So this would be for every adult. such that a married couple who files their taxes jointly would get a direct payment for $2,400 plus $500 for every minor dependent child they have on top of that. This would be a phased out benefit. It would start to phase out at $75,000 per person on an individual filer basis, or for a married couple filing their taxes jointly at $150,000. And then there would be a gradual phase out from there of this economic benefit. On top of this, there's going to be about $150 billion of financial assistance to critically affected business, making available for them additional loan alternatives and liquidity so that they don't have to go out of business. On top of this, we're also trying to address another looming crisis that I think could be made better through a combination of legislative and regulatory action. I had a couple of very timely, well-placed phone calls with Speaker Wilson and President Adams of the Utah legislature over the last 24 hours, 36 hours rather. And I had some conversations with them about the importance of making sure that banks and credit unions have the option, if they're willing, which most in our community throughout our state, and from what I can tell throughout the country, are willing to provide, which is that payments to banks or credit unions, to lenders, throughout April and May could be suspended, with the understanding that there's going to be a real liquidity problem over the next couple of months, could be suspended, and that banks could notify, along with credit unions, to their customers that the failure to make a payment in April or in May won't necessarily result in the seizure of assets or in foreclosure on any property. This is important for many reasons, including for the small and mid-sized businesses out there who have certain fixed costs that go into their businesses. We don't want them to have to lay off workers during this time period, and it's not in the interest of the lender or of the borrower in that moment, in this particular moment, for the bank to go after their assets. So I've had a number of conversations. I've introduced myself now with my colleagues, and it's now a topic of banks and people including Speaker and President Adams, to our attention. Yeah, I also had a good conversation with Mary Daly, who was the president and CEO of the Federal Reserve Bank of San Francisco, which of course includes Utah and a number of Western states. They're looking for ways to give the regulatory flexibility to the banks so that when they do offer this option, the lender can do so with great confidence that they're not going to suffer dire regulatory consequences from doing that. The legislation that I referred to as phase 3 will also provide additional clarity that banks and credit unions will have this option and won't suffer adverse regulatory consequences. As to the timing of the phase 3 bill, we just received moments ago the draft of the McConnell legislation. So this is the Republican proposal that I summarized a few minutes ago. This is about 250 pages long. This has now been introduced in the Senate, and it's also been shared with Chuck Schumer, the Senate Democratic leader. Over the next 48 to 72 hours, we're going to try to integrate these two proposals together in order to find something that can pass in the Senate and pass in the House of Representatives. In the meantime, I'm doing everything I can to keep Utahns posted on these developments, and look forward to doing everything I can to make this process and this awful crisis as tolerable and as temporary as possible.
Thank you, Senator Lee. That's very important information that you've shared, and probably most important, in addition to the details, is just the fact that we've got to keep money flowing through the system. That's the oil that keeps the engine going. So thank you for what you're doing there. We want to turn quickly to Representative Ben McAdams, and of course start by saying, Representative McAdams, we're all thinking about you. You're in our thoughts and prayers. All of you on the call know that he was recently diagnosed with the COVID-19 virus, and we're just so grateful that you take time. We know that you care about your constituents, you care about Utah, and you'd be here with us even under those adverse circumstances.
Well, thank you, Derek, and I'm happy to do it. This is a crisis that's not going to take a pause. And so while I've isolated myself at home, haven't left my house since I was symptomatic, I think it is important that we all continue, if we're in a position to help get resources to, first of all, stem the spread of this virus, but then also put in place those things that will help us to bounce back more quickly, stabilize the economy, and then help us to bounce back. That's important. And we don't have the luxury of time to sit and wait. So Senator Lee, thank you for that description of the legislation that's passed. I think it is a rare moment when Washington seems to be working constructively. You have diverse ideas across the political spectrum, but twice now we've come together to pass legislation, and it's critical that this third piece that Senator Lee described get passed. So let me just describe a few administrative things that have also happened in the last couple of weeks that will be valuable for economic recovery. First is the Small Business Administration is administering up to $2 million of qualifying small business loans and economic injury disaster loans. So our businesses are able to apply for that. The IRS, this was a big one. IRS is permitting interest-free deferrals of up to $1 million for individual filers. So where you would normally have to pay your taxes on April 15th, you can defer that until July 15th. So defer it for up to 90 days, which hopefully provides some liquidity amongst our smaller businesses. And then also waiving all interest on federal student loans until further notice. So Senator Lee, I agree with his characterization that the first things that we want to do is, and the best thing we can do to, and Derek, I think you said this, best thing we can do to speed our economic recovery is to stop and to slow, we're not going to stop it, but slow the spread of this dangerous virus. And so part of that is certainly things that are now falling into place. That is more abundant testing. We need to be able to test more people and to test sooner. I'll give you my example. I started showing symptoms on Saturday. I called my doctor on Sunday morning. He asked what my symptoms were. I had a temperature of about 100 degrees and I felt achy. And he said that certainly that was a cause for concern. I should isolate at home, but that it didn't justify using one of the scarce tests that we have based on those symptoms, that I should continue to watch it and let him know. And so I did. I followed that advice and I stayed home. It was on Monday night, Tuesday morning that I really took a turn for the worst and started having some difficulty breathing, and my temperature jumped to 103 and was really feeling a lot worse. And I called my doctor then, and he said that those circumstances justified a test and recommended me to the clinic here, one of the drive-through clinics that our state was able to get up. Thank you for that. So I went and received a test, and as you all know, tested positive. I look back at that circumstance. So I have the luxury of a job where I can, and I followed, my symptoms on Sunday were mild. So tested earlier and to self-isolate. Important to go into place. Package you're seeing forward now. I've been on conference about with different. I work with the Blue others on the House side. What I did is we want to. Emphasis is going to be part of a healthy process. Forward ideas, citizenship. Not have the time. I appreciate characterization. They're doing exactly what were bold ideas. I like Senate package to continue to those individuals, some of those low income, that they have a cushion that when they can stay home, insurance, paid leave is going. They aren't tempted to go into work. People, if they're able to recover, focus on our small businesses. We need to the market that we're going to stabilize back to. But impacts of this are going to be felt the spectrum from that we're seeing right now, organizations that run shoestring budget are their audiences, the impact side, and we need to act swiftly, long process to help recover out of this. And we're going to see casualties and nonprofit casualties who aren't able to survive this, but let's minimize those losses, help them to be resilient and bounce back.
Thank you, Representative McAdams. And maybe you could, just a clarifying question, because you mentioned specifically both small businesses and nonprofits. Are nonprofits eligible for those SBA loans that we've been hearing about? Do you know?
That's a great question. I believe they would be, but please reach out to my office. And if you are a small business or a nonprofit, we can facilitate your communications with the SBA. I would encourage people. That process hasn't yet been blessed, so you're not able to apply for those loans right now. But we are encouraging people to start filling out the paperwork, getting it ready to go, so that as soon as that is all worked out, you can get that application in. We are hoping to just streamline some of the bureaucracy. That's part of the process right now. The frustration is there's just a lot of bureaucracy in approving these loans, and so we're hoping to streamline that. But I would encourage people to they can start filling out those applications now and have them ready to submit.
Thank you. And I saw a text come across the wire from Ryan Starks at the Governor's Office of Economic Development that said yes, they are eligible for. So
okay,
thank
great.
you, Ryan,
Thanks,
for
Ryan.
sending information. Yeah. And Ben, even though you may not feel good, you still look good, if that's worth it. So thanks again for joining us. I know that we're coming up on the hour. We still have some important information we want to share, especially from the Department of Workforce Services, the job resources that they have. But in case any of you need to jump off right at 5 o'clock on the hour, let me share with you an email address, economictaskforce@slchamber.com. That's economictaskforce@slchamber.com. For those of you who registered for more information about the task force, for more information about these town halls, we'll make sure you get that email address. We also want to make sure that you know that this is only the first of a regular and ongoing town halls we'll be having about FAQs and FAQs. FAQs. We'll have our next one Tuesday at 4 p.m. John, let's go to you and talk about job services that exist in the state of Utah.
It runs the unemployment insurance program. So when we face challenging economic times, we get very busy. And we have already seen an uptick in claims being filed by people that have been displaced or furloughed based on the COVID-19. So we serve both employers and employees. Our message to anyone whose employment has been impacted by COVID-19 is to apply for unemployment insurance. Everybody's situation is a little bit different depending on how the employer is handling it as well as the employee. So really the only way we can determine if you qualify is by applying. So we would encourage all businesses out there, if employees are being displaced, is to go to our website and apply. The best way to do that is by going to jobs.utah.gov. That is our website. To file a claim is going to the website and doing that. We've done a couple of things on the landing page of our website. If you go to that jobs.utah.gov, you'll see a COVID-19 in red, and it says what to do if it impacts your employment. So you can click on that, and we've put together several FAQs in regards to unemployment insurance, one for employers and one for employees, and it's pretty comprehensive in nature. So those of you out there that are being impacted, there's a lot of great information on that COVID-19 click there that you can get for your businesses. The other thing that we've put together that is increasingly challenging is FAQs on childcare. A lot of our families and parents need childcare support to remain employed. So we've put together FAQs for businesses, for schools, and so that will, as you go onto our website, to take a look there as well. Any employers that are preparing to either lay off or furlough staff can take advantage of our rapid response team. We'll come out and advise any of businesses that are facing a potential furlough or a layoff We're going to put together some online workshops to kickstart the process so that folks can get good information on what that means to a business or to the employees that work for you. So we'll have a lot of virtual options for you as well, but we also can send staff out to interact with you or do a consultation by phone. The good news is that in our website or our job system, we have about 31,000 open jobs. So there are jobs available for individuals that have been displaced or looking for work. If you've been laid off or furloughed and you're really looking to get either retrained or a new job, we have all sorts of programs and services that we deliver in our 34 employment centers across the state. So the biggest message that I want to leave with everyone on the video today, the call, is if you have jobs right now that are you're seeking people to fill those jobs, put them on our website. That is the I claim now unemployed with jobs that are available. Everybody uses our system. It's a free system. If you can look available, then we with those to match where they get jobs labor force right away. So maybe the biggest take leave with all of you is our site. It's easy to new openings in. So if you help us get working again. Parents Trust Fund is for $1 billion and weather this storm fund. So have the funds available. We'll continue to find ways to market.
Thank you. Just as a reminder, that webs.utah, and let's stress, because we're available and we can help, as you said, who are displaying them. Let's not forget that it was ago that Utah job creating state country, that's are strong. Nothing are fundamentals. Things systemically wrong with our economy. We have a challenge that we're dealing with, but we've still there that are looking for. And by the way, if you're one of those companies and you're on the call, the most important thing you could do today is hire someone. We encourage you to do that. We're going to go now to Kate Bradshaw to give us an industry perspective. I mentioned that part of the task force was to create some committees, and one of those very important committees was industries, and to have a two-way communication to make sure that we're hearing from them as well as with them. And so we've got Kate Bradshaw to give us a report. And Kate, we're sorry that we are short on time. Apologies for that. We're going to bring you on to our next call as well, but we want to give you the few final minutes that we have left.
You hear me okay?
We can hear you.
Great. Well, first off, I just wanted to wish a speedy recovery to Congressman McAdams from his hometown of Bountiful. Hope that he's up and about soon and feeling well. It's been great serving on the subgroup that's been formed. It's made up of a lot of industry executive directors and presidents of associations. We've met twice so far, and it's a place where you can form to the full task force, but also problem solve just amongst industries. In Utah, we've always had a great history of the business community working together to solve problems, and being able to work across industry sectors to find ways to solve things, sometimes without the help of government, sometimes to collectively show when we need some assistance from government. This group was able to easily facilitate with local governments, with the help of Dave Davis, who's the president of the Food and Retail Association, setting up specialty hours for senior citizens and people with immunocompromised health needs to have special shopping hours at our grocery stores. Conversations today involve our supply chains, both those that are growing and making food with the Farm Bureau and those that are manufacturing products, important paper products like toilet paper, so that we can make sure that those groups are all communicating together and sharing best practices. Another great conversation that is those critical infrastructures, systems that are still having people work and are trying to make sure they're doing it in a way that's safe with social distance, how we handle issues of cleaning and things like that. And so there were some good ideas shared back and forth between manufacturers, medical device manufacturers, the Farm Bureau, things like that, on what they're hearing from their counterparts nationally, and then sharing that back so that we can problem solve internally. It's kind of been great to just form Team Human and set aside some of those barriers between industries and just look for ways that we can solve problems by ourselves, and then when we need that help, send those issues back up to the full task force so that the governor and lieutenant governor and the legislature is aware of where we need some assistance. And we've had great participation from local government. I also serve in local government, but it's been great to have that participation so that we would know where those lines of authorities are, if there's certain things that cities can be doing to be helpful, to make sure the industry is sharing those with cities, to understand kind of where some of those authorities come from in terms of local health departments and the restrictions they're putting in place. So it's been a great way to quickly share issues, disseminate information across industry sectors, and we plan to keep meeting actually every day on a conference call, our new normal conference call. And so if there are issues that other industry sectors are experiencing that you think could be solved with within that subgroup, I know that J.C. Skinner has done a great job of chairing that group and bringing any issue that you think could be solved by just having one industry be able to talk directly and open with another industry might be some of the easiest and quickest ways to bring resolution and positive movement on an issue as we all get through this together.
Thank you, Kate. As I said, getting this information specific from industries is going to be critical to the process, what their needs are, as well as what they're doing to stay open and to stay healthy and to keep commerce flowing. I want to thank all our participants again for joining and remind you, you can find the resources at coronavirus.gov. Click on the business section. I also want to let you know that today's town hall was recorded and you can find it on YouTube by searching Salt Lake Chamber. Two final reminders. One, if there is a question that you didn't have an opportunity to have answered or information you didn't hear, email us at economictaskforce@slchamber.com. We're going to drill down on some of these things that you heard today, more facts and more FAQs. Next at 4 p.m., we'll be sending you all the link. Thanks again for joining us.